I didn't hear the door creak. I didn't hear the footsteps crossing the hallway. What I heard was a voice I'll never forget. "You didn't lock the door." My blood ran cold. I froze where I was, my body exposed, vulnerable, unguarded. Slowly, as though my muscles were no longer my own, I turned toward the sound. And there he was, standing in the doorway, his hand still resting on the knob, his chest rising and falling as though he had been holding his breath. Our eyes locked. His were wide, startled, but not just with shock. There was something else buried there, something dangerous, forbidden, unspoken. 1,000 thoughts shot through my head. How long had he been standing there? What exactly had he seen? Why wasn't he leaving? I should have screamed. I should have covered myself, slammed the door, pretended this never happened. But I couldn't. My arms wouldn't move, my voice wouldn't come. All I could do was stare back, trembling inside, every second stretching like eternity. Then he stepped forward. Just one step. Slow, measured. My heart skipped a beat. His hand slid from the doorknob to the frame, his fingers curling around the wood as if steadying himself. But his eyes, they never left mine. The silence was unbearable. My skin burned, my breath quickened, and yet neither of us spoke. It felt like the world had stopped, and in that moment I knew something irreversible had begun. And from that night forward, nothing was ever the same. "Hi, my name is Ellen, and I need to confess something that changed me in ways I can never take back." That night, when he stood in the doorway, it wasn't just about the shock of being seen. It wasn't just about being caught off guard. It was about what it stirred inside me. Something I had tried to bury, something I had pretended didn't exist, desire. For years I carried it quietly, a gnawing hunger, locked away where no one could see. I lived my life on the surface, but deep down there was always a fire burning, restless, aching, begging to be set free. I wanted more. I craved intensity, passion, a dangerous kind of closeness that I could never admit out loud. And then he came along, my stepson. I don't even know when it started. Maybe it was the day I realized his voice had changed, no longer soft and unsure, but steady, commanding, with a weight that made me listen. Maybe it was the way his shoulders had broadened, the way his presence filled every room he walked into, or maybe it was in his eyes, those lingering looks. Those moments when I felt like he was studying me, as if he knew exactly what I was hiding. At first I told myself I was imagining it, that it was nothing, that I was crazy to even think such thoughts. But the more I tried to dismiss it, the more impossible it became. Every smile, every laugh, every brush of his hand when he passed something to me, it all fed the hunger. That night, when he caught me, when his voice trembled with words that should have ended everything, I realized it wasn't fear I felt. It wasn't shame. It was awakening. The fire inside me roared to life, and suddenly I wasn't the same woman anymore. The craving I had denied for so long now had a face, a name, a presence that haunted me even when he wasn't there. And the scariest part? I didn't want it to stop. I wanted to explore it, to push further, to see just how far this forbidden pull could take me. From that moment on, resisting him wasn't an option. Because deep down, I already knew I didn't want to resist, and that truth changed everything. After that night, I couldn't look at him the same way again. But maybe the truth is, I had already started noticing long before. It was subtle at first. Little moments I tried to dismiss, like the way he leaned in close when showing me something on his phone, the faint warmth of his arm brushing against mine, or the way his eyes lingered just a little too long when I laughed, as if he was memorizing me. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was nothing, that it was harmless. But the more I noticed, the harder it became to deny. I remember one morning in the kitchen, the sunlight was pouring in through the window, and he was just standing there, pouring himself coffee. Something so ordinary, so casual, but the sight of him stopped me. The way his shoulders filled his shirt, the way his jaw tightened as he focused, the calm, confident way he moved. It was nothing like the boy I had first met years ago. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man. And that realization made my heart pound in a way I couldn't ignore. Then there were the conversations, Short, casual talks that somehow lingered in my head long after they ended. He'd ask me about things no one else seemed to notice. If I was tired, if I'd eaten, what shows I liked. Small questions that shouldn't have mattered, but the way he looked at me when he asked, it felt like he was peeling back layers no one else ever touched. And then there were the silences, the quiet pauses when our eyes met across the room, when neither of us spoke, but everything unsaid hung heavy in the air. Those silences were louder than words, more dangerous than any confession. I started catching myself anticipating him, waiting for his footsteps in the hallway, listening for the sound of his laughter, noticing when he wasn't around, missing his presence more than I ever should have. And every day, the hunger inside me grew stronger. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It wasn't just loneliness. It was temptation, alive, breathing, standing right in front of me. And though I told myself I shouldn't want it, every fiber of me was already moving toward it. I knew I was standing on the edge of something dangerous. But instead of stepping back, I leaned closer. Because in him, I didn't just see a man. I saw possibility. I saw fire. I saw everything I had been starving for. And I couldn't let it go. After that night at the door, something shifted between us. He never said anything outright. He didn't have to. The way he looked at me was enough. It was a look that lingered, that burned, that left my chest tight and my breath unsteady. At first, we both pretended nothing had happened. Breakfast went on as usual. Passing each other in the hallway was ordinary, but beneath the surface, the air had changed. I felt it. I knew he felt it too. One evening, I was in the living room folding laundry. He came in, dropped onto the couch beside me, and picked up a shirt from the pile. "You missed a spot," he teased, brushing his fingers against mine as he took the fabric. It was innocent, harmless, but my skin burned where his hand had touched me, and I had to look away just to keep my composure. Little things like that started happening more often. A brush of the hand when passing a plate at dinner. His arm brushing mine when we both reached for the remote. His gaze finding me across a crowded room and holding me there, frozen, until I was the one who had to look away. Each moment was small. Each one could be explained away. But inside me, they piled up like fuel to a fire I couldn't control. Then there were the private moments. One night, I went into the kitchen for a glass of water. He was already there, leaning against the counter in the dark, scrolling through his phone. The only light came from the glow of the screen. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked softly. His voice was low, steady, almost intimate. I shook my head, suddenly aware of how close we were standing, just a few feet apart, alone in the silence of the night. Our eyes met, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Neither of us moved, but the tension between us crackled like a live wire. When I finally broke away, rushing back upstairs with my heart pounding, I knew I was already too far gone. Because I didn't feel guilt, I felt excitement. Another time, it was the rain. The storm outside was fierce, the house trembling with thunder. I was on the couch under a blanket, reading, when he came and sat beside me. Closer than usual, too close. "You scared of storms?" he asked, his lips curling into the faintest smile. I shook my head, but my body betrayed me. The blanket brushed against both of us, and when his arm stretched casually along the back of the couch, I felt my whole body react. The warmth of him, the nearness, the safety that felt dangerous. I should have moved. I didn't. Then came the moments when his boldness began to grow. In the kitchen one afternoon, I was reaching for something on the top shelf. I stretched, struggling, when suddenly I felt him behind me. His hand reached over mine, grabbing the jar with ease. But he didn't step back. He stayed there, close enough for me to feel the heat of him, his breath brushing against the back of my neck. "You're welcome," he whispered. And then he walked away, leaving me frozen, trembling, desperate to catch my breath. That was the moment I knew it wasn't just me anymore. He wanted this too. From then on, it became a game. Unspoken, dangerous, and intoxicating. The late-night talks that stretched too long, the stolen glances at the dinner table, the lingering touches that neither of us should have allowed. Every day, the line blurred a little more. Every day, the temptation grew stronger, heavier, impossible to ignore. And I began to crave it, not just his presence, but But the thrill of it all, the secrecy, the danger, the feeling of being alive, in a way I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about what he awakened in me. By the time I realized how deep I was in, it was already too late, because I wasn't resisting anymore. I was waiting for the next stolen moment, waiting for the next time his hand would brush mine, waiting for the next time the silence between us grew so loud that one of us would have to break it. And deep inside, I already knew. The break was coming. It happened on a night I'll never forget. The house was quiet. Everyone else was asleep. I was in the kitchen, standing at the sink, staring out at the rain falling in sheets against the glass. My mind was restless, spinning, pulled in directions I didn't want to admit. And then I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't have to turn to know it was him. My body knew before my mind did. My skin prickled, my breath quickened, and when I finally turned, he was already there, leaning against the doorway, watching me. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence between us was thick, dangerous, alive. Finally, he broke it. "You keep leaving the door unlocked," he said, his voice low, deliberate. My chest tightened. Those words, the echo of that first night, sent a shiver through me. I should have laughed it off. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I stepped closer, just one step, and he didn't move back. His eyes met mine, steady, burning, pulling me in with a force I couldn't resist. "Do you know what you're doing to me?" he whispered. The air left my lungs. My heart was pounding so loudly I swore he could hear it. I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. Instead, I stood there, trembling, caught between fear and desire, between right and wrong. And then his hand brushed against mine, just barely. A touch so light, so hesitant, but it ignited me like fire. I should have pulled away, but instead I stayed. I let his fingers linger, our hands barely touching, electricity shooting through me. The storm outside thundered, rattling the windows, but it was nothing compared to the storm raging inside me. His hand slid further, covering mine completely now, firm, certain. "Say it," he murmured. "Tell me you don't feel it too," but I couldn't, because it would have been a lie. In that moment, every boundary shattered, every excuse I had clung to dissolved, and all that was left was this forbidden hunger, raw and undeniable. I leaned in, closer than I ever should have. Our breaths mingled, shallow, uneven, the space between us vanishing second by second, and just before the line was finally crossed, just before there was no going back, I realized I didn't want to go back. That was the moment everything changed. That was the point of no return. After that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my body still trembling, my mind replaying every second of what had happened in the kitchen. The way his voice had broken the silence, the way his hand covered mine, firm, certain, the way I leaned in, willingly, knowing exactly what it meant. I told myself it was just a moment, just one reckless spark in the dark. But deep inside, I knew better. Moments like that don't just vanish. They don't disappear when the sun rises. They stay. They grow. The next morning, when I saw him at the table, my chest tightened. He looked at me. Just one glance, sharp, loaded, unspoken, and I felt my whole world tilt. It wasn't casual anymore. It wasn't innocent. We both knew it. Everything was different now. The air between us was heavier, charged, impossible to ignore. And yet, no one else noticed. The house carried on as though nothing had changed, as though the earth hadn't shifted beneath our feet. But every time his hand brushed mine, every time his eyes found me across the room, every time the silence stretched just a little too long, I remembered. I felt it all over again. I wanted to tell myself it was wrong, that I needed to stop. But the truth, I didn't want to stop, because for the first time in years, I felt alive, desired, seen. And the way he looked at me told me he wasn't going to let this end here. One night will lead to another. One secret will grow into something bigger. And deep down, I already know this is just the beginning, because once you cross a line like that, there's no turning back.